Ansible is one of a configuration management tool. Okay, it is very, very helpful, very, very useful in a scenarios, in a cases whenever you need to deploy, or rather, I would say you need to push the configuration. You need to push the config to more than one servers, or rather more than one server. It's like, I would say, more than 10 servers, 50 servers, or 100 servers. In a that time, you do what? You basically have the Ansible, right, which is going to act as a bigger configuration management tool, right, which is going to help you to push the services, to deploy the services. Now, it is not only the configuration management tool, right? Because with the configuration management tool, it ensures, right? It ensures that system remains in a particular desired state, in a particular desired state, right? But it is also helpful. It is also helpful in the orchestration, when you have to orchestrate, when you have to multi manage, or when you have to provision multiple services, so in or coordinate with the multiple services and service things, then also it is helpful. Okay, one of the important part of the Ansible is that it is agentless. It is what? It is an agentless application. When we say it is an agentless application, that means it uses SSH. Okay, it uses SSH or WinRM in the case of Windows, right? The Windows Resource Manager, to connect to any of the servers, right? So it is an agentless. Agentless means very simple things, that you don't have to install agents. You don't need to install the agents in the server where you are pushing. For example, you have a server A, right? And you have a server B. So obviously, Ansible has a prerequisite that you should have a Python setup, right? You should have a Ansible installed. But the server B where you are pushing, right? There, of course, Python is okay, but no need of the Ansible agent. Okay, it's not needed to have the Ansible agent. No need of Ansible agent. Whatever we write in the Ansible, we write it in a format of declarative YAML format. We write it in a format of declarative YAML format, right? Now, it's the idempotent. Idempotent means that if you run the same YAML, okay, if you're running the same YAML, will not break things, will not break the things, means it is not necessary that if you run the same code again and again, if there is no change, there is no change in the code, if there is no change with the things which you are applying, it will work smoothly. There is no problem with that. Okay, so that is about Ansible. Now, when we talk about architecture of Ansible, we talk about architecture of Ansible, right? Architecture of Ansible is very simple. Okay, this is very simple. You have Ansible control node. You have Ansible control node. Okay, or you can call it as a master node. You can call it as a master nodes. Okay, so you can also call it as master nodes. Then you have Ansible manage nodes. Okay, or you call it as a worker nodes. You call it what? As a worker nodes. Now, this Ansible node is what? This is something which will be helpful, right? This is something which is basically, let's say you have created a EC2 instance, right? You have created an EC2 instance with Ansible installed on it, with everything is being put up, right? And your managed nodes can be what? It can be your EC2 instances, it can be your containers, right? It can be your pods or anything, right? It can be anything, correct? What, how it has to connect, right? It has to connect using the SSH mechanism. It has to connect using the SSH mechanism. Means every control node, every master node, this will have a EC2 instance, and it will also have one inventory file. It will also have one inventory file. It will read this inventory file. It will read this inventory file, or in a small terms, you can call it as a host file, right? It will read that, and whatever the playbook, whatever the place you have written, it will use that, and using that, it will connect to the remote hosts. These are my remote hosts, right? Where you can have the worker nodes, like let's say WN1, you can have WN2, you can have WN3, and so on, right? Any number of worker nodes. So it will connect to each worker nodes via the SSH, and it will execute its module. It will execute its playbook in that, right? And when we do that, it will return what? It will return the output back to the control node with a summary that it has done this task. This is how the architecture of Ansible works. Now, when we talk about architecture of Ansible, another important thing is to talk about the components of Ansible. Another important part is to talk about the components of Ansible. The very important component of Ansible is inventory. Okay, inventory is what? List of hosts and groups, right? We define it as a list of hosts and groups. For example, we will put it as that, okay, there is a group known as a web servers. And now within this group, you will define all your web servers related data. You can have a group related to production. So you will define the production groups. Okay. Modules are what? They are the works, right? They are the work, they are the things, or you can say the things which are going to be executable components. In a nutshell, you can say it's as a executable components. Like we write a module like yum, copy, right? These are the libraries, these are the things which which Ansible does have already, right? So shell. So these are the things using which you write a playbook, you write a things. Then important part is playbooks. Playbooks are what? YAML files which will help you to define the task to run. Means you define the task, you define the list of plays, you define the list of set of tasks, and you say that these are the tasks, these are the plays which you have to run here. Roles are nothing but these are the reusable structures. These are the reusable structures, reusable features which you will be using for your managing your playbooks. Then you have a facts. It is what? It basically collects the data about those workflows. Whatever the things you are running, right? It will collect the data about all of these things. Okay. Then you have the handlers. Handlers are what? They mean they will triggered by the task. Example, they have to restart a service, right? You have to do any action, nothing. So it will triggered by the task. And Ansible Galaxy is what? It is a public repo for Ansible community roles. A lot of community roles are there. For those things, the Ansible Galaxy will manage, which is known as the which will handle all the roles. Now, how you can install it, right? Let's say if you are using a installation part we are talking. So let's say if you are using a Mac OS, right? You can use brew install Ansible. So this will be installed in your local machine. However, let's say you have the Ubuntu, right, or a Debian machine. So you will do what? You will use sudo apt update -y, update the package manager and the dependencies, and then just do sudo apt install Ansible -y. The prerequisite is very simple, that you should have the Python, and you just do Ansible -version. This will install the Ansible for you, right? Now, as soon as you install the Ansible, the next step is that you create your inventory file. Inventory file has to be created. How do you create that? You basically call it as inventory.ini, right? And you create this using a simple method, right? You create this using the simple method here, and you call it as, let's say, development server. Okay, so this is my development server, and you will write at 192.68.1.z2, 192.168.1.3. These are my list of servers, right? Now to test these, now to test the connection, what very first thing we do the ping command. And to ping command is something like this, which you can run via your terminal, and you can say that Ansible all -i. -i means you passing the inventory file path. Okay, you are passing the inventory file path. minus m module. You say this is my module. This is the thing which I have been going to write. Okay, module name is what? Ping module. And then you say minus u Ubuntu. That means this is my Ubuntu module. Okay, this I'm going to run it for the Ubuntu user. Okay, minus u is what? Your user. And if you have any key file or something, so you can pass the key file for the connection. Otherwise, if already the connection is there, so you don't need to pass all of these things, right? You just do the ping and it will give you the response. It will give you all the response and the things. Now, if you have to write your playbook, right? If you have to write your playbook. So to write your playbook, again, we write the playbook in some this format, right? We say, we write it via the name, right? We say that, okay, we want to do what? We want to install and start Nginx, let's say on some 50 servers, which are there in my inventory. What are those servers? Web servers, or we can say development servers. Means in the inventory file, it will look for this group. It will look for this development group. It will look for this development alias, and whatever have all of these data, right? Whatever have all of these data. So all of those data will have the Ansible being set up. Now become, yes, it says that, okay, become the elevated permissions. Then you define the task, that what task it has to perform. The first task is it has to install the Nginx. So you give the name. How you install the Nginx? To install Nginx, you do what? Sudo apt install nginx -y. This is a normal command. Means you are using an apt as a package manager. We are using the apt as a package manager. What we want to install? Nginx. So we will say name as Nginx. And if we make the state of this as present, so this will basically help us to install Nginx. This will help us to do the things. How to start the service? So to start the service, you will use a service module. You will put the name Nginx, you will put the state as started, and you will say enabled yes. So this will start the Nginx. Now the point is that the good part is that you can do, right? Basically, first of all, you can validate the syntax. Okay, you can do a dry run of any of a playbook which you write. Okay, and you can write it using Ansible playbook. You pass the -i inventory file name site.yaml, and you can do minus minus check, or you can do minus minus syntax check. Okay, there is a syntax check. This is a command which will help you to check the syntax if there is everything good or not, if there is any error or any other problem are not there. Okay, this is how you can do the syntax check. Okay, so you write this. To run this, to run the playbook, you write Ansible playbook -i inventory, and you write the playbook name. This will help you to run the playbooks. Okay, now a lot of times we also go and we also see the ansible.cfg file. Okay, this is the configuration file for the Ansible. This is the configuration file for the Ansible. We can create Ansible roles, right? We can create Ansible roles, and also we can have the vault, right? We can have the secrets and the things, right? In those kind of scenario, when we have to talk about Ansible roles, right? We have to talk about all of these things. So let's see how does that work. Ansible roles, right? Ansible roles are what? They are first of all used for structure and reusability. They are used for structure and reusability. Now, when I say that they are used for structure and reusability, means you can use the Ansible things and the stuff to organize your playbooks and add it up in your automation logic. Add it up in your automation logic. For example, we want to do one thing. We want a task to perform this: install Nginx, okay, configure MySQL, and deploy an application. And we also want to do what? We want to set up the monitoring for the same. Now, what we can do that if we have to do this task again and again for a certain application, to install the Nginx, to configure the MySQL, to deploy the things and stuff, we can create a role for the below package. for below the self-contained package, I could say, because this is my self package which I have created. So create a package which will do all of these things. Now, when we define the role, we have a folder structure. How it works? We have a folder structure like we say that okay, we have a role, right? In that role, we will have one folder structure for Nginx. Okay, we'll have one folder structure for Nginx. Inside that, we will have a task.yaml for Nginx. That means a task file which will install the Nginx. We will have a folder structure for SQL also, right? Which can handle the SQL things. If not, we will have what? We will have a handlers, right? In the role, we will have the variable files. We will have a template files. So in the roles, we have this kind of a structure which basically have each and every have the own task. Means this task, right? These will do what? This is basically the main list of tasks which is going to be executed by the role, which is going to be executed by the role, right? You will have handlers, right? Handlers are what? You will have handlers. Handlers with what? It will be again the action triggered by the service. Action triggered by the service. Templates. If you can have some Jinja templates defining, okay? Jinja templates, we define it like nginx.conf.j2. Okay, these are my something known as a Jinja templates. Files means some static files copied over. You are copying some files, right? Vars means the variable file, right? Role specific variables. So you are doing a production format segregation. Defaults means default variable, the things, right? And meta means nothing but it's a metadata about, okay, dependencies between roles, okay, between roles. This is going to be meta. Now, when you have to use this, when you have to use the playbook, so you will write this in your playbook host web server and you will just call the role. You will say that, okay, use the Nginx role, use the firewall role, and that is how you can use that. Likewise, we have a next topic known as Ansible Vault, which is helpful for your secret management. It is helpful for your secret management where Ansible has its own inbuilt secret management. Okay, it has its own inbuilt secret management, a encryption management system. Okay, this is about Ansible. Now, to create a secret again, we use a command what? Ansible Vault create secrets.yaml. It will open the editor and let's say you write that okay, here this is my secret, right? This is my secret for the Ansible Vault, right? You can create the secrets, you can do the things. And now to view the secrets, you will write a command. You will write a command Ansible view secrets. This will basically help, and you can edit the secrets using edit command. You can encrypt the secrets or any file using an encrypt command. You can decrypt the secrets and the things using this decrypt command. This is about the Ansible Vault. Now, sometimes there are the scenarios, there are the scenarios which you have to handle. Now, there are some scenarios with the Ansible, means how do you handle the task failure during playbook execution? There are the tasks which are getting executed, right? There are tasks which are getting executed, but you want to continue to execute that even if the task is getting failed. So what you do, you basically write ignore underscore error colon yes. You write ignore underscore error colon yes for handling these kind of scenarios. Okay. Or you can write a debug message. You can write the debug message. Okay. There are other things, right? How do you handle, how do you include, or how do you add dynamic task? Okay. Dynamic task in Ansible. What do I mean by this? This is mean, right? That example, you want to add some of the task, okay, which is maybe in some other role or some other things, right? So you write a playbook like minus name include dynamic task, and then you define it like include task, and you call it as what? The items. You define this is how we define the loop in Ansible. This is how we define the loop in the Ansible. Loop, for loops, iteration loop, right? This is how you define in the Ansible. Now, then here it will be that with. With means it will take each item. So with items it will take here, and with each item you will define the task which you want to include. For example, task1.yaml, task2.yaml, right? Whatsoever the task you want to include, this. And you can define a condition that you want to use it when when on a particular condition, and you can define a particular condition here, that this is when you want to use it. Okay.
Okay.
When you have to deploy, another scenario is you have to deploy the Ansible task. You have to deploy the Ansible task to multiple environments. To multiple environments. For an example, there is a requirement. There is a requirement to deploy the in, let's say, some of the configuration, right? So let's say you have a configuration name as nginx.conf. Now this configuration could differ for dev, could differ for prod, could differ for staging environment. So in the scenarios when you have to deploy the configuration into the different environments, right? You have to ensure that you have to create a separate directories, right? There will be separate directories, or there will be some specific related files and things. But your environment has to be chosen. For example, you say name deploy to environment. Now you have to define the host file. Your host file will be what? This will be again your env, right? Based on the environment, that host file will be picked up. And then you will have a var files, means if let's say you have some variable files and all those things, so you would put that, and here you can define that, okay, my var files is in this particular environment dot YAML. So you will say dot YAML. This is how your specific environment related files and things you choose. Okay. This is how we choose the environment specific files. And then if you have any task, anything, you can put up those things, right? Another important question is that how do you verify if the file exists or not, right? Before performing a task, you want to verify if file exists or not before performing a task. In that case, you will write the Ansible playbook, right? To check if file exists, you will put the stat, right? That if there is a file module known as the stat, which will check the file existence. You will check the path, you will check the register file check, perform the task, and done. This is how you will do that. How do you check that, ensuring that the task is executed on specific OS distribution? Okay, means how you will ensure that a task is executed on specific OS environment, right? So for example, I want to execute a task which is basically the task running on Ubuntu, and I want to install Nginx on that. But when I want to install, I want to install on a condition that if the Ansible distribution for this is Ubuntu, only then you put that. Otherwise, don't put it, right? Otherwise, don't add it.
Okay.
How to ensure that there are parallel jobs, right? How to ensure that there are parallel Ansible playbooks or Ansible jobs are running, right? So another question is how to run the Ansible playbook in parallelism. In this kind of scenario, you will use minus minus fork. We'll use minus minus fork. And when we use minus minus fork 10, this means it will execute the task, it will execute the things on the 10 hosts simultaneously. It will execute on the 10 hosts simultaneously. honestly. Okay. So this is how we put that, right? Now, another important big question is how you manage dynamic inventory. How you manage dynamic inventory in Ansible. This is very helpful, right? In the scenarios, in the things when you have more than like more than 10 servers, 5 servers, right? And you don't know which server will be created when, right? Which server will be created when, which server will come into the picture when, right? So there, example, you are working on AWS, right? Azure, GCP. These are what? There you have multiple servers being created by multiple teams. And now if you have to create inventory, you can't take the IP of each server again and again, right? So for these kind of scenarios, you write a script. You write a script where in a Python you will write, you install a Boto3 Python library example, right? You configure AWS EC2, configure your AWS EC2 in the Ansible.configuration, and you have to use the dynamic inventory script. You have to use the dynamic inventory script, right? If you search Ansible AWS EC2 dynamic inventory script, right, you will get a lot of examples. You see, there is a dynamic inventory plugin, right? There's a dynamic inventory plugin. You export your AWS access key, secrets key. You call the plugin, you use the access key, secret key, and you tell the profile. It will help you to automatically do all the things for you, right? It will automatically get all the host names. It will automatically get everything for us. For example, right? In here, if we have to do this, so we will have a plugin for known as like AWS EC2.yaml. You will call a plugin AWS EC2. You will tell the regions, that which regions you want to put, and you will say that okay, US East one region. In the tags here, in that don't worry about indentation. Tags, you will write that I want the environment of prod. So it will look for all the EC2 instances which are for with the environment as prod, and it will help you to basically get or create a dynamic inventory this. Now tomorrow any new server comes in and which has a tag name as a environment colon prod, it will automatically be added in your Ansible EC2 dynamic inventory file. So this is how we run the thing. This is how we create the dynamic inventory in Ansible. So this is all about the Ansible. This is all about the things which you create in the Ansible. You define, you select, you make the connections with help of a private keys. You make the connections with help of the SSH private key. You create it in an inventory file, right? You run it for a multiple configurations and these things. Having an understanding of a basic idea that how does it work, what all things it do, is going to be helpful for you. And you can always refer some of the assignments, some of the other questions which I will send via the GitHub link is added in the description and things, and then you can use that, okay, to practice your to practice and to ensure that you have a good understanding of Ansible.